world. Joining me right now is the former Secretary of Energy, former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Governor, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. What's going on with Jennifer Granholm? Is she not understanding the significance and issue of this gasoline price spike?
Well, I think the entire Biden administration is waiting for a clear signal from the president, from the head of their administration, the head of their party at this particular point in time, before they make any statements about changing course. They were clearly given instructions during the campaign and afterwards that we are going to be in a war with fossil fuels. That's the message out there. That's the reason oil and gas producers are not putting any of their companies on the line financially until there's a clear message that you're not going to get stabbed in the back by this administration. So whether it's Pete Buttigieg who's saying, hey, listen, the way to fight high gas taxes and high gas prices is by getting an electric vehicle. And, you know, electric vehicles are fine. But the fact is, most Americans can't afford an electric vehicle. I'm always stunned, Maria, by John Kerry and his blatant misunderstanding. I think it's because he's a blue blood elite who has no clue about what the average American is going through out there. He would rather you suffer, you average Americans out there, than to admit that he is wrong on this climate issue. And that's what's driving this administration. They are out of touch with reality, just, again, a blatant disregard for what you are going through, the average American out there. The idea that if gas goes to $6 a gallon, well, you know, it's tough, I guess, but it's not bothering me much, would be what John Kerry would say. And I find that to be such a distasteful thing for the average American out there. We could unleash American energy. We could clearly send messages, opening up those offshore leases, opening up federal lands, allowing those LNG permits to be quickly authorized, and not only for Americans, but for our allies around the world. What's going on in Ukraine is incredibly just disheartening to see. But when you think about this administration and how they handled Afghanistan, you know, maybe not going into not going into Ukraine full bore might be a blessing. I don't know that, but it's a sad moment in American history.
So, I mean, Jennifer Granholm did not even know how many barrels of oil a day the U.S. needed. I mean, as an energy secretary, you would think that this is the #1 number she has in her head. She says she didn't have it in front of her. I guess what I'd love to know from you, Governor, is the potential for the U.S. I mean, you worked tirelessly on ensuring that we were capitalizing on the potential of America. Look around the world, look around the country for us, and tell us where the most important pockets are for oil and gas pumping and generation drilling, and why we're not using those right now. Can you identify those areas for us specifically?
Well, you obviously had a guest on that's right smack dab in the middle of one of the most important ones, and that's Alaska. The state of Texas is the other. When you go to the Permian Basin in West Texas, I mean, there are decades, if not a century worth of energy just in those two areas. We have more energy than any other country in the world, more than Russia, more than the Soviet Union, and we should be using it, because if anyone thinks that this energy is not going to be used around the world, they're wrong. And again, I go back to these that would run America to the ditch on the issue of climate and shutting down the fossil fuel industry. Be damned what it does to you economically or otherwise. I think they're going to be held accountable at some point in time.
Well, look, we already have this climate agenda becoming the priority in all sectors, right? Joe Biden's trying to get through his pick for the overseer of the banks, Sarah Bloom Raskin, who has said in the past, let's make the banks not fund big oil. President Biden is still searching for oil and going to dictators. He's looking at Venezuela. He's got officials going to Venezuela. He's in talks with Iran. Saudi Arabia won't even take his call. Instead of ramping up production in the United States. I spoke with former Vice President Mike Pence on this program earlier in the week. Here's what he said.
President Biden and this administration must unleash American energy and stop going hat in hand to places like Venezuela. I hear that President Biden may be headed to Saudi Arabia to ask them personally to pump more oil. And for heaven's sakes, let's offline any further discussion of the Iran nuclear deal for the sake of Israel's security.
So, I mean, he connected the dots, Governor, that energy security is national security, and he's going to these dictators for more oil.
Yeah, it is nonsensical is the only word that I can come up with. They would rather you suffer, you American citizens, than to admit that they were wrong on energy policy. Up to the point of even going to Maduro, to go to the Ayatollahs. It's stunning to me that they would so turn their back on an American industry that have been the captains of our economy. They have been the most patriotic people in American history. When you think about when America or the world was in jeopardy, the oil and gas industry in America came to the forefront and, frankly, helped save the day. Why not again? Yeah,
well, Governor, they don't want these companies to make money. Now we understand that the Democrats are proposing to tax big oil. Look, Dagan McDowell, you said it from the start. This is all intentional. They want to price people out of the market. They want to institute new tax increases for big oil. It's intentional.
Right. They want to, and they're still talking about this, drive our emissions, Governor, down to zero. For what? When John Kerry himself said we could do that very thing, if we could do it, it wouldn't have any impact on global warming. And it just exhibits a irretrievable stupidity on the people who are in this White House that they worry about global warming. Well, it doesn't matter where the oil derrick is or the tailpipe. If you're begging other nations, Venezuela or even Saudi Arabia, to pump more oil, a barrel there, it has the same effect as a barrel coming out of the ground here in the United States. None of it makes any sense. To add to that, electric vehicles, what do we use to produce electricity? It's natural gas. And when Governor Cuomo up here in New York, thank God that moron's gone, he cut off pipelines and producing of natural gas. And when we had a cold winter a few years ago, we had to import natural gas from Russia.
Yeah, and with all of this being said, nothing has even been spoken about of small modular reactors with zero emissions. Oh, they're against those too. So we have to have some adults get back in the room on our energy policy in America, whether it's adding these small modular reactors, which are walk-away safe, which are economical now, which are zero emissions. When you put those into the mix with our clean-burning natural gas, America would be clearly energy independent, and we wouldn't be seeing the problems we have in this country.
Governor, thank you so much for being here today to walk us through it all. We will be watching and certainly keeping a spotlight on it. Governor Rick Perry, good to see you, sir, in Texas this morning.